Welcome, good morning, good afternoon, and to some, good evening, to another, for me, Saturday morning episode of This is Revolution Podcast. If you're new to the show, if you're new to the channel, please hit the like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell as we're constantly adding new programming to the channel. And we want you guys to be alerted every time we go live. And for those of you that have subscribed, thank you oh so much for being part of the engine that keeps the TIR machine going. Today, I will not be having Pascal Robert with me because he's on assignment. And that assignment is to finish not one, but two very important essays. And if he doesn't finish those essays, I will have to take the first thing smoking to Florida and kick him in the tuchus. Just kidding. But seriously, finish the goddamn essays. Finish the essays. But I do have some very, very suitable, I won't say replacements, because these guys are part of the family. They're part of the crew, extensions of the show. So let me bring in my co-host. He's also my homie. He's also my dog. He's also no longer the only recipient of affirmative action in Maine. He is Marcus of the Left Flank Vets.
Peace and greetings to the chat. Peace and greetings, Jason Miles. I have to take Pascal's saying just to make sure that we get it in. But what's up? What's up? Good to see you. I like the background. Nostalgia points. So I'm actually very excited for this conversation. So
I have to say this. So the first ever live stream I did, like a serious show, was with our guest, Dr. Michael Harris. And I really enjoyed his book. We've always had great conversations. I think he's underrated as an important voice on the left. I don't know why more people don't want to have him on their shows. Maybe he's intimidating. I don't know what it is.
It's the accent.
Could be. He doesn't like play it up for laughs. He's very serious with that accent. He's like Simon Cowell.
Well, the subtlety brings a seriousness to it.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't laugh much. Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Maybe we need to get him an agent.
Yeah. Who's the angry cook guy? Maybe if he could be like more
Gordon Ramsay. Yeah, yell at people more. That's our
fuck off. Yeah.
And have some Britishy way to tell someone to fuck off.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Well, and our next host is British. He will tell you to fuck off in a Britishy way, but he is trying to adopt an American accent. He's doing a horrible job of it. I will say horrible. He's also tweeting these surveys that are hilarious. Is he the most left member of the crew? I don't know. I actually said on air on Ben Burgess's show that he was. Does he appreciate shit like that? Nope. Nope. Jean Bajlan.
Hello. How are you? Greetings, Jason. Greetings, Marcus. Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. We got into a left off in Twitter, and the real answer is none of us are really left compared to Vaughn. But I would say this. I don't think it's bad that you're throwing low-grade shade at Dr. Michael Harris for being serious.
Dr. Michael Harris.
He's like, you coming on here going, Dr. Michael Harris. I don't know why anyone listens to him, and no one listens to him.
No. I'm not throwing shade. Look. I want the motherfucker to sell a bunch of books. I want him to fucking.
We do. His books are fun. Like,
thank you. They're accessible. They're fun. They're great conversation starters. I'm mailing Giannis Varoufakis. Let me say this on air. I'm mailing Giannis Varoufakis because on air and off air, we got into a debate on our recent interview we did with Giannis for The Real News about the merits of Star Wars. Because Giannis is like, nah, Star Wars is bullshit. It's all about Star Trek. He was throwing that shit up like it was a gang sign. Star Trek, Star Trek. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I was like, you got to read Michael Harris's book. And he goes, you know what? Send it. So I was like, got you, motherfucking Giannis.
Well, there you go. Look at Jason. He's name dropping and everything now. Look at you. Mr. Fancy Pants. Yeah, I'm hanging out with Giannis Varoufakis. We're just emailing right now. I might hit him up and join him on his resort island home in Rhodes or something like that.
He invited us to Greece.
Oh, he did? He invited you to Greece? He's gonna pay your ticket.
No.
Okay,
he can afford to pay the ticket. Come on.
See, that's the thing. It's like I'd go to you. Hey, Jason, you're welcome to come to my house next weekend and stay over.
He's not an Epstein.
He's not an Epstein.
Yeah, he's just like, hey, come. He's a leftist. You know how we are. We're not doing that well. Like, you're doing all right.
He's doing well. He was a finance minister.
Of Greece.
Still being better than not being a finance minister.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Let's
I'm not in
let's bring in our first guest. Our first guest is the host of probably my favorite show on the internet. Another person that I hope gets a network deal, because I like what this person does way more than like the Toys That Made Us. I'm like, it's cool.
Toys That Made Us is not that good. Like, Toy Galaxy definitely tip top when it comes to it. Yeah,
I'm like, how do these two guys get more in depth than these people that have a Netflix budget?
Because he loves the toys in his heart. It's not just a business, it's a passion.
Well, let's bring in that passionate man right now. He is everyone's favorite pop culture host. He is the Dan Larson of Toy Galaxy.
What's up, guys? That was a hell of an intro. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world listening. Thank you very much for having me on again.
Oh, dude. I've been wanting to do this episode with Harris for a while because Michael Harris, I follow him on Instagram. And for a while last year, he had been reading a bunch of books about future societies, and he was like throwing up these big ass essays on Instagram. And it was really interesting. He's like, oh, I got a book. And he sent me the table of contents. And I was so enthralled by the table of contents, I didn't notice that he had fucking sent me the draft. I was like running around with just the table of contents. I was staying in the Central Coast at the time. And the people I was staying with, I was like, because they're all huge sci-fi nerds, right? And gamer nerds. And I'm like, dude, look at this we gotta fucking watch Back to the Future. We gotta watch Blade Runner again. And then I can get into a 9-hour conversation about fucking Blade Runner and Transformers and all this other shit. So without any further ado, he's still in the green room. He's ready to go. He's got his intellectual thinking cap on. He's ready to blow our minds. He is the author of Welcome to the Rebellion, another book that I mailed to Dan. Stay alive.
Being on the show.
Dr. Michael Harris.
Good morning.
Dude.
I've never been likened to Simon Cowell. I don't know what to do with that. Fuck off, I guess.
Which would you prefer, the Simon Cowell or Gordon Ramsay?
Ramsay.
Yeah, Ramsay.
Jimmy.
Yeah,
Ramsay. No, you need to watch that. Did I send you the YouTube video, the documentary, Jimmy Savile is a Black Wizard?
No.
No, I think I would have remembered that.
No,
No.
well, everybody needs to watch Jimmy Savile is Jimmy Savile a black wizard? Because at first you're like, oh, this is a joke, and then you're like, oh no, they actually believe he was a wizard.
I don't know.
There's
Dan, do you know who Jimmy Savile is?
You don't want to know who
You
Jimmy
don't want
Savile
to
is.
know. I did this. I did a Bill Cosby video essay, and somehow I went down a rabbit hole of Jimmy Savile, and he's like the UK's Bill Cosby, but way worse.
But wait, I think he was. I can't remember. I don't know. Maybe Michael knows better than me. I think he was somehow connected to organized crime in Leeds very early on.
Yeah.
And then because he's from around where his mother used to live in Scarborough, which is like 30 miles away from where I am right now. But he was always a very strange man, and it was very strange how he became so famous, because he doesn't seem to have any perceivable talent, except in retrospect being really good at like getting away with all kinds of sex crimes.
He looked like the fucking Dutch boy, the little Dutch boy in a paint can.
Now then, Jimmy. They used to have a show called Jim Will Fix It, where you would write into him about your dream, and he would fix it for you. And in retrospect, that has a much darker implication.
Oh, it's if you get it's some dark shit. But let's get out of the dark shit of the Savile.
Talking of dark shit,
let's get even darker.
So as I'm reading through your manuscript, your book, and you have a chapter about Back to the Future. I think it's chapter 2. And I want to jump to chapter 2 first, and then I'll let the rest of the guests and hosts jump around, because we all have science fiction takes. I know Larson has a science fiction take. He's done like 25 shows on science fiction shit. I went back and watched Back to the Future 2 last night, and I remember going to the theater, and I remember not liking it as a 12-year-old. And I now know why I didn't like it, because of the alternate universe of Biff World. Biff World fucked me up. So if you guys don't know about Back to the Future, in part 2, grown Biff sees Marty McFly buy an almanac that has all the sports scores in it, and hears Marty talk about he's gonna, hey, with this knowledge, I can go make a bet, and I can win some money. And when Marty goes back in time to the new 1985 of Biff World, Biff steals the time machine and drops it off to his younger self, and creates this alternate universe. And in reading Dr. Harris's book, the alternate universe is based around what the world would look like if Trump ran it. And they design this 1985 Biff to look like Trump, from the hair. Again, watching it again, I'm like, oh shit, it is Trump world. And it's this dystopian future, poverty everywhere, sex clubs, and then this beautiful hotel, which in retrospect looked a lot like Atlantic City when the Trump Taj Mahal was there and it was kicking. The Taj Mahal was the one shiny object in this gross, shitty Reno. And I never thought about how dark even the portrayal of the mother was. She's just a sex object. She's abused. She's an alcoholic. And after he abuses her and then, basically says, look, you can leave if you want to, but I'm going to cut your kids off and, cut you off. And she goes, it's my fault. I shouldn't have said anything. I was like, this is worse than any Lifetime movie I've ever seen. Like, this is hard to watch. And my lady friend I'm watching it with is like, I can't watch this. You got to turn this off. This is like rough. Like, what did you guys, did you go back? Did anyone go back and revisit any of those movies? Dan, did you go back and revisit Back to the Future 2?
I've seen it relatively recently. I didn't really feel like I needed to refresh on that. It was still relatively in my head, and has been since 2016. That Biff Tannen timeline. I've referred to it that way in many videos that we've recorded since then, as far as the Trump presidency being the it's arrived. We're there. We're in shitty 1985. Like, this is the place we don't want to be. So as a kid, I enjoyed Back to the Future too, because I liked the shiny pop version of the future, with even the parts of it that didn't work, just the idea that the technology was there and doing things, the 15 different monitors on the television, and the fax machine in the closet, and hover boots and all that kind of stuff. That was the flying cars and the the hoverboard, and those were the things about the future that I was excited about, and that I was glad to finally see depicted that way. It was definitely the optimistic future of 1985. Like, we can't get to that future from here, but we could have gotten there from 1985, absent the hover technology and that sort of thing.
Hey, we love hover technology.
What's that?
Can I just? We love hover technology. That's the greatest. As a child, I was so sad there were no hoverboards. I really, when you see
I
those
was sad there
hoverboards,
wasn't Nikes that just went on your foot and
They have
shrunk
those
to the
now.
right size.
I think for the anniversary, for some anniversary of the movie, they actually created shoes that automatically sucked onto your foot. But
well, that doesn't
They didn't.
sound
They
good.
didn't suck on your foot, did they? They made the shoe, but they didn't make the shoe that like.
yeah, like
But-
the shoe, like you put your foot in, and the shoe automatically
Shrinks to your size.
shrinks to your foot. Yeah.
Oh,
That sounds horrible. But can I ask Dr. Michael Harris quickly though? What's the name of the book? What's the kind of like meta sort of big theme that you're hitting, and when is it coming out? Before we perhaps hit the so that people have context about your book specifically, this specific project.
Sure. The working title for the book is "Come with Me if you want to live,"
Terminator.
which is a quote from Terminator, of course. And it's a study of 9 sci-fi movies, dystopian sci-fi movies, and how they are predicting the future we're living in increasingly, and how, if you trace it back, the flowering of 1970s dystopian sci-fi in particular, and that really rich period of like serious but still popular sci-fi, when it went more mainstream in the wake of Planet of the Apes 2001, was really in particular reflecting new left environmentalism, when environmentalism moved from being about conservation, which conservatives, Republicans could support, to being more of a critique of capitalism, industrial capitalism. And the argument in the book is really that that helped create the new right, the Reaganite right, the Thatcherite right, as a well-funded, organized project to push back that new left environmentalism, and it succeeded. And so one of the roles that Sci-Fi took up was articulating those premonitions of collapse, and that's one of the reasons you get that rich period in 1970s sci-fi film in particular, that was telling us about the future we're increasingly living in. But there's that weird sense of, because we saw it in film, we all kind of know it, but in another way didn't take it seriously. And that's really the main implication for the left, is how we're living in what's been called this implicatory denial, that we know this stuff, but our politics is not reoriented around dystopia and collapse. We recognize it. We're not in denial about climate change or any of the other crises we face, but it doesn't really fundamentally reshape our politics. Whereas I think it has actually fundamentally reshaped the politics of the right. Trump is a dystopian president, the first dystopian president, a recognition of dystopia. That, and going back to the Future, that's, you know, it's not the most obviously dystopian sci-fi movie, but actually the more you look at it, it is a dystopian sci-fi movie. Even the first movie, which appears like a kind of very Reaganite film when you first look at it, it's about how can this middle-class small-town American family return to material success. But even there, the small-town utopia is beginning to fray in the background, you know. And then the second movie takes that further, I think, and really runs with it. So that's essentially what the book is about, and it's out to publishers and agents at the moment.
And I guess one thing I found interesting is like you described is part of this is these movies kind of like predicting, but also, and especially you go like the V Vendetta portion of this is describing, it's more of describing reality than it is, you know, predicting the future. You know, like if let's look at the material sense of like what's going on in America, you know, United States, largest, you know, prison population in the world, you know, and like the continuing like increase in militarization of policing, all of these things. Like Beef and Vendetta is less of like what's looking forward than, you know, if we actually took an account to what's going on around us, it might be just like what's happening now. And beforehand, even before we'd gone on air, I was talking about how there's this like a Turkish AI drone that had the first completely automated, you know, kill of a combatant, you know, and so like jokes like, hey, Skynet's coming online. And you know, that's, so I guess too is like, I guess my question is, go even like looking at a movie like Just Look Up, where like they're going into the project with the goal of like you know, trying to really face that mirror. I guess the sense is like, what do you think is I mean, like, what are the results? Is there really, you know, like a value or the ability for type of cinema to show people like clear image of what we're living in?
Well, I think, yeah. Well, this is the paradox, isn't it? That we've all seen these visions of the future, and they're so commonplace that, in one sense, they've lost their power to shock. I mean, if you know, you think about cyberpunk, because I start the book off talking about Blade Runner and talking about how that's both a very cliched now vision of the future, which remarkably is more than 40 years old, but it still feels relevant. You think about how quickly sci-fi dates, and yet we have this vision of the future which hasn't dated. You could show anyone, you know, a frame from Blade Runner or any cyberpunk kind of movie, and they would not only recognize kind of where that came from, but also still think about that as our future. And so I was intrigued by why that is still a relevant, prescient vision of our future, and increasingly our present. You know, why hasn't that aged? And it's because neoliberalism has stuck us in that future and not allow, it was a deliberate project to not allow us any other futures, to close off any other futures that were being opened up by the 1960s, 1970s New Left and other new social movements. So part of the problem is the familiarity. We're no longer shocked or alarmed by them. And there was a period where we could have changed the future, and that's what those early 1970s dystopian sci-fi films were urging us to do. And then I think, in a way, you can say Blade Runner comes at the end of that, comes out in 1982, but really you can see it as the capstone of that 1970s sci-fi dystopian trend, and says, well, it's too late now. It's too late. This is your future. And the reason people initially reacted badly to Blade Runner was because it has no kind of Star Wars like liberatory project in it. There's no one fighting against that future. It says, this is it. This future is set. And
Blade Runner, yeah, it's a
great.
really. I didn't like it as a kid. It was really
No.
dark. Dan, and I don't think you've done a Blade Runner show, have you?
We've not touched on it yet. No.
Are you going to?
It's possible. It's possible. We're sort of starting to touch on movies as individual episode subjects at this point. Blade Runner is going to be a dense one for sure.
You know, we're around the same age. How did you like Blade Runner as a kid?
I didn't see it as a kid. I didn't see it until probably almost by the time I had graduated from college. So mid 90s, late 90s. So it hits different at that age than it would have hit, you know, if I had seen it, you know, as a 10-year-old or something. I honestly probably wouldn't have been able to pay attention to it at that age because while the visuals are interesting, I don't think I would have been able to follow the story, honestly. I think it just would have been too slow and not flashy enough. And, you know, where's the spaceships, you know, fighting each other? I didn't see Alien at that age. I didn't see Aliens at that age. You know, those were all movies that I saw years later. I don't know. Maybe my parents had something to do with that. Like, you're not going to like this, or this is too much for you to get. Not sure if it just didn't appeal to me.
Oh, you're lucky because my dad was
Yeah.
like, "Yep, that's what we're watching. It's Platoon for you, kid."
I saw Predator for the first time on vacation at my on HBO at my grandparents' house, and was like,
Oh wow.
maybe I'm too young for this. Maybe I shouldn't have seen him get his chest cavity blown open. I don't know.
I had to watch all that because my dad was like, I had a weekend dad, and he would do this thing. I don't know, Mark. Well, everybody's parents is married on the panel. It's shit. But my dad would be like, we go to the video store, and he'd be like, you can pick one movie, and I'd pick some kid ass movie, and he'd look at me and be like, no, we're not getting that. So it was like we're getting, you know, Terminator. I was like, all right,
There you go. We're living that trauma, but we do have a super team. We live it, Jason. What the guests should know is that TIR, in addition to being an internet show, is also a big long therapy session for Jason and Pascal. But we have a super chat, and the question to Michael is: any thoughts on Bryn's existence and its projections about the near future? That includes augmented reality, balkanized politics, professionalized amateurism. I don't know anything about it. Do you have any thoughts on Bryn's existence?
I do not know that. Is that David Brin, presumably?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
assuming
Yeah.
David
I don't. I haven't. I mean, it sounds kind of typically cyberpunky, but without knowing more about it, I couldn't say. Someone in the chat also said that Soylent Green, which is one of the other movies I discuss, is set in 2022, which is true. And that film is kind of the center of the book because firstly, it's the backdrop is an environmental crisis, and they talk about climate. They reference climate change. This is a film that came out in 1973. So again, you know, we knew.
But that's not the only film in '73 that talks climate change. What's the film with Bruce Dern? Where
Silent Running.
Silent Running. I actually used Silent Running for a video clip recently, and I'd never heard of it. I actually checked out quite a bit of it when I was making this clip. That's a dark ass movie about.
Oh, that's so sad. Yeah, very dark. And again, another film that assumes our failure to turn things around.
Yeah, I mean, there is a very negative. I think. I mean, I didn't complete reading all the manuscript, but it was a bit of a doomer. I mean, I don't know if there's a happy ending at the end, but it was pretty doomsday in my book. But that seems to be the elan of science fiction of the last 40 years. I mean, I don't see very many attempts at utopia anymore anyway.
You want to say something, Dan?
Yeah, what I would say is that sort of era of the dark, the resigned future of a dystopia, that era of science fiction has led right into our new era of superhero worship. in that the powerlessness that we feel on a daily basis because the leaders that we have that have the power to do something, to do anything, our perception is they're not doing anything. We keep trying to elect the right people, keep trying to put the right people in office. They keep speaking to our concerns and then not delivering anything. And so we've seen this sort of rise of the superhero as the individual, the vigilante working outside the law, who can make change, who can deliver results. And I think that obviously in the last, 10 years for sure, if not 15, 20, has really resonated with movie-going audiences.
Well, can I
And
can I
that's
can I,
that's
can I
what
ask
the
this
Obama
question?
and the Trump presidency are, though. Obama and Trump presidencies were the superhero presidencies, right?
Well, let
First
me
you had-
ask you this. Let me ask this question to the panel and also to the chat. Is there something, and this is coming from a person that will watch every superhero movie and show and enjoy it? Is there something a little fascistic about some of the superhero worship that's going on right now? Does anybody want to
Yes.
elaborate?
Everybody's nodding
No.
yes.
Yeah,
I mean-
like as soon as Dan was making the point of like how these like the art kind of transitions from having a void and then it being filled by this mythic hero, like the first thing I thought was like all of these nerds that will do everything they can to defend Elon Musk, and it's like and just like they or like somehow his personal exploits, his personal endeavors, will somehow save the world just because he's so smart. Like, even though he's like literally invented almost nothing.
He invented a plug. I'll have you
Yeah,
know.
like he redesigned the plug so that only Tesla plugs, like it was like he just basically did a capitalism, like he just made it so it just made it Tesla's a little bit more expensive, a little bit more exclusive, and like that's it. And he said it's got to be carbon fiber. Like the guy's not a genius, but there is this, the superhero worship that's somehow he's going to save the world. I don't know.
Go ahead, Gene.
Sorry, I was just want to say, aren't they making like an Obama style Superman movie as well? Because I think
Yep.
Gene, come
I think
on,
this is the thing. We both the Trump and Obama presidencies are like very similar to each other in many ways, because both those presidencies gave you policy wise pretty much like Obama did the basic Democrat stuff. Trump basically did the traditional Republican thing. But it was all about style presentation, and people projected all their like hopes and dreams, whether it was liberals looking towards Obama or reactionaries looking towards Trump, onto like this superhero leader who would like save the day. And that really does kind of chime. I really think that's an important observation, Dan. That chimes with the kind of this kind of superhero culture that we have in society, where problems, the collective people acting as collectives can't solve anything. But if you just have one super strong guy to come in to cut away from away for everything, you can do something.
Yeah, the further analysis of that is that comic books and superhero comic books have always been adolescent power fantasies. They have traditionally in the U.S. in the West been a children's entertainment medium, and the characters are so simple, and the colors are bright and vivid, and the a lot of times the powers and the situations and the scenarios are ridiculous, because they're not trying to be told to a mature reader. They're being told to a kid who is just indulging in the idea that they have power, that they can affect the adult world, even though they're 7, 8 years old. And so, looking at that through the lens of like that being popular media, I can say at the same time, it's like that worries me, because it is supposed to sort of be a child medium. But I know that you can also, deal with mature stories in that. But I think it does speak to the same kind of frustration of the 8-year-old who looks around and says, my needs aren't being met. And now you have a 38-year-old who looks around and says, look, I've been through this system my entire life and it is not working. It's not addressing my needs. So I either need to myself be empowered to make change, or I need to put somebody in there who is going to be empowered to make change on my behalf, and maybe just wreck this whole system to get something done. And like you said, I think both the last presidents, Trump and Obama, play a big role in that.
extending from Trump though, does QAnon, you think, serve like those same purposes? Of having, and like originally of like some person in the deep state that's, willing to, like put out these informational texts that allow us to, get to the, like, I don't know, whatever goal that they're going for.
I would argue that the QAnon stuff is more about trying to make sense of a world that doesn't make sense. You know how things are supposed to work, and you hear the speeches, but the results you see don't make any sense. And so if someone is now telling you, look, there's a plan to all this, you just be patient and watch, and gives you all these, I knew it had to be that guy working in conjunction with this guy behind the scenes, and that it all makes sense now. That I think that's the allure of that.
Yeah, it is. It's we are magnetically attracted to storytelling, and our lack of effective storytelling on the left leaves people open to wild stories. But the thing about QAnon, of course, it's doling out the story piece by piece, so it's an episodic story as well. It's not just
like Disney Plus and all the Star Wars shows.
right. And they get you,
Damn.
and they get
Brought to you by
hooked.
Fox.
And, yeah.
It's QAnon brought to you by Fox. That'd be awesome.
But rather than, I mean, we can mock people for believing crazy shit, of course, and we should, but also recognize the power of storytelling and our absence from that competition.
And
which is why I'm interested in writing about popular culture and its potential. And why aren't we drawing on popular culture?
That's actually what I wanted to ask then. Like, I wanted to perhaps follow up on a point you made right at the beginning. So you say the left hasn't learned from this popular culture, but the right, and I assume you mean the radical right specifically, is learning from this popular culture. And my observations, for example, is like this is like super clear in like meme culture, in the online forums, in the way that, I remember saying, I don't know if you remember last time I talked about myself being a fan of the Warhammer 40,000 franchise, and Trump was like depicted as the God Emperor of man, with like the Emperor from 40K with this thing on. There was all this kind of stuff. So could you perhaps like outline a little bit about what isn't the left learning? Because I think a lot of left people do talk about science fiction, right? But like perhaps they don't learn the lessons that you're talking about. And what is the right learning by adopting these kind of things? Like, I'm looking at it in a superficial way, but is there like a deeper level in which they are learning from these sci-fi dystopias?
Well, there are at least two levels, right? So there's the storytelling level, and the way you can use popular culture to kind of quickly reference things that people are already familiar with. So, dystopian sci-fi is, if I say a cyberpunk future or a Blade Runner future, or, people immediately come up with that image because we're so familiar with those visions of the future now. So there's that kind of level. And then working back to say, well, how do we get to that future? Environmental collapse in food production system, collapse of political institutions, and so on. And telling that story and looking like we notice. The thing about Trump and co is they look like they've noticed that people feel like they're living in a dystopia. We sometimes don't seem like we've noticed that people feel like they live in a dystopia, despite the irony being, in Marxist political economy, it's a theorization of crisis, and yet sometimes we don't seem to be talking that much about crisis, actually, because then we go back to getting caught up on kind of having technical policy debates about this or that. The Trump narrative is a narrative about I recognize you are living in a dystopia and I'm going to do something about it. Right. The second level of taking sci-fi seriously, and this is where we get even darker, is you look at, we talked about V for Vendetta earlier. right, which is one of the films I talk about. That film is about the fact that conservatives want to kill us. Okay, if we take that seriously, which I think we increasingly should, what are we going to do about it?
Nothing.
Pause their
Silence.
GoFundMe.
Yeah, right. That film is about the projection of conservative paranoia onto enemies, right? Which we know, is the pandemic of conservative thinking, right? Which goes back a long way, and they project us as the enemies within who are seeking to exterminate them when we're not, and so they think they need to exterminate us first. So if we take that seriously, and you obviously know how the debate in Republican circles is developing in the United States, how do we respond to that?
Dan, did you want to say something? Look like you wanted to say something.
No, I'm listening intently.
I mean, so obviously, QAnon and so on, they think that the evil Clinton space lizard child eating monsters are setting up internment camps. I mean, they've thought that, in various waves since. I remember hearing, about internment camps in the 1990s, and black helicopters and all of that. There's always been that strain of paranoia, but that virus is increasingly spreading through the right and becoming increasingly mainstream, as you know, and we know from history what that turns into. That they're going to round us up before, ironically, they think we've got a plan. They're always talking about our plans. We haven't got a fucking plan. But
AOC and her plans. It's always AOC. Right.
I think that's a brilliant point as well, because like a lot of the right-wing discourse is predicated on this all-powerful left, and and this all-powerful left narrative is also fed into by mainstream liberals in the United States. I read an article recently. It's like the reason the Democrats are failing is because of the left and AOC. It's like the left is like pathetically weak. So all the things they present are extreme. It's almost I don't know if you know who James Lindsay is. James Lindsay is he's a maths PhD, and he's very into there's a critical race theory, Marxist, cultural. It's like the same cultural Marxist conspiracy to
It's like a dollar store Ben Shapiro.
Yeah, it's basically the same conspiracy that there's this big cultural war being waged to emasculate Western civilization. It's almost though as if when I hear him talk about that, it reminds me very much of Max Weber's Protestant ethic of capitalism, where the ethic of capitalism comes from religion, whereas and then develops in a kind of secular version where you just save money for the sake of saving money. James Lindsay is the secularization of anti-Semitism. So you have this anti-Semitic conspiracy theory tradition on the political right, but it's kind of shed the overtly anti-Semitic parts, and it's now just there's a pure cultural conspiracy. So now instead of it being the Jews doing it, it's all these cultural Marxists. There's a kind of secularized version of that, and that kind of pervasive. That ideology, that idea is I think you're correct, is increasingly pervasive on the political right, projects this powerful left, where I do think I would say, Michael, I think there are many people on the left who are, depending on what we mean by left, I think the liberal left is incoherent, because on one hand, in Britain and in the United States, you have both this extremely hyperbolic language of they're the resistance fighting fascism, and you have to vote for Joe Biden or you're a fascist. And then those same people will be like, well, we have to reach out to moderate Republicans. And you can't really have both. You can't say the Republican Party is a fundamental threat to democracy at the same time as saying, well, our agenda has to win Republicans over. That's incoherent. But on the left, I do think there is, I think the majority of people on the left are increasingly aware of this extremely violent and reactionary language. I think the question is like, what do you do about it? How do you approach it? You know, and I think that's where I think we're lost. Not in so much of even recognizing the problem, but it's like the kind of we don't have any future, so we don't even know what we would do about it.
There's a theme that kind of I think the reason why Harris resonates with me is because of my punk upbringing and the kind of no future theme in that. And when you watch a movie like Blade Runner, and he points it out really well in the first chapter, where it's like, this is, people just kind of accepted this shit as this is what it is. Overpopulation, pollution everywhere, really dark, stark. Everybody's fucking depressed. That's another reason why that movie was really hard to watch as a young kid. There's hope in Star Wars, right? Luke Skywalker's looking out at the hot ass suns, like, one day I'm gonna be a fighter pilot like my daddy. Like, and there's hope in that story, right? There's no hope in the other science fiction stories that follow. Mad Max, Blade Runner.
Well, people, I think Michael brought this up last time he came on. People look at Blade Runner as a utopia now. That's how perverse things are. People like, wouldn't be freaking cool if we lived in the cyberpunk world. That would be awesome. There was somebody on Twitter posted something which really struck me. We live in a world now where you'll see a headline is where like Silicon Valley tech company invents painful torture machine warned about in 1950s sci-fi novel. Don't invent the painful torture machine. You know, you know, like people. I think maybe not the kind of militant grassroots fascists, but I think there are kind of perhaps like right-wing tech reactionaries, the kind of people that Corey Pine writes about in Live, Work, 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 Die. These kind of people who view these cyberpunk, Soylent Green, RoboCop, all these kind of science fiction, with things that a regular, normal, not psychotic person would see as a dystopia, as being something you can learn a lesson from and you can invent something. I mean, what is RoboCop but public-private partnership?
It's neoliberalism.
It's neoliberalism. All these things are neoliberal, capitalist, techno hellscapes. But if you're a techno-capitalist, they probably seem like a really good idea. And Silicon Valley, I'm pretty sure most of those people are fully aware of that sci-fi dystopia canon. I mean, what the hell is the meta thing that everybody's talking about now with this? It's to do this like a cyberpunk virtual reality thing. But just we live in a dystopia. It's just way more boring and way lamer. I think Mark Fisher had.
Well, that's Blade Runner, right?
It's like we live in boring Blade Runner, right?
I think it's like and we've talked about RoboCop like a lot on this show, but I mean that's the thing is like there's a bunch of people who saw RoboCop and were like, you know what? That's why I'm going to Stanford, is because that programming in the cop robot was just a little off, you know, and that's what they go about. Like, that's how I'm going to change the world. And like now we've got, you know, robot dogs being contracted out to police stations.
Like, well, and showing up on Jimmy Kimmel and, you know, in Star Wars and all this other stuff as part of that PR campaign to normalize the murder robot dogs before they roll up on your house, you know?
Yeah, I can't wait. I spent 3 Ethereum on a robot dog NFT. So I'm looking for that to come back.
Here's a headline that I saw yesterday, and I posted it on Twitter, and I don't have a very large internet presence, so nobody cared to engage it. But the company that made the bionic eye for visually impaired people and blind people, I don't know if you saw this. They're like, it's not really financially beneficial.
No
for
longer
us.
supported.
We're not going to support that.
Seeing for you. Yeah, exactly.
That blew my fucking mind. And maybe it didn't get a lot of traction because very few people had the eye. I think only like 350 people actually had it. But still, think about that advancement in technology. One of the things that we look at these movies, and there's all these advancements in technology, right? The shoes that slip on your foot in Back to the Future, hoverboards, flying cars, jetpacks. We never get any of these things in real life, right? All the these tech barons just take the same shit that they got from DARPA decades ago and put a new case on it. Well, that's all we get.
That's where like you're only going to see that type of technological development, because like I guarantee you that electronic eye, right, the bionicle eye, it's going to come back as soon as you can attach, the directional capabilities of a Hellfire missile, right? but that's when it's going to go back into production.
But to your point,
they've got jetpacks now. They've got
like medical advancements that we get. There's certain medical advancements that we don't really have because of, you have to look at where a lot of the funding goes, where a lot of the research goes. If people like Bill Gates want to put $1 gajillion into curing malaria, then doctors aren't sitting around trying to figure out how to stop airborne viruses. They're trying to figure out, well, how do I get some of that funding money to cure malaria? And then maybe I can get into looking deeper into coronaviruses. So the fact that we live in a world where you don't have any sort of, especially for us in the States, you don't have any sort of socialized medicine, and you have to leave it all up to private industry, and private industry is telling you, it's not really in it for us to support your vision, even though we've cured your blindness. Why aren't we celebrating this more? And instead, I saw a passing headline that, I don't even know if it was picked up by any of the major news wires.
But Michael, do you something you said struck me. So yeah, V for Vendetta is about how reactionaries want to kill us, right? But do you think the lesson from these sci-fi movies as well for some people is like, it's not like the 1930s or 40s. They don't even have to kill us. They can just put us on Facebook and just like get us enraged all the time and make money off us, like like milk us for words. Like the new fascism just has to break us politically and monetize us as chumps. Like if you defeat the left, who are you going to wail on all the time? You might as well just this techno dystopia, this whole social media thing. It's a great way to contain people. You just direct people's political energy into futile social media, podcasting like we do, impotently yelling into the void and things like that. I mean, it was just something I was thinking of when you said that, because do they really want to exterminate us anymore anyway? I mean, at least the left, I mean, I'm sure they want to still kill the foreigners, but the internal left, seems useful to me.
So if I can respond real quick, Michael.
Yeah.
One of the things that I see on a small scale, just having a YouTube show and being part of the engagement economy, is this idea that since the real emergence of the internet, especially social media, all of this has been powered by engagement. Algorithms run on engagement. The money runs on engagement. My video gets more views if it gets more engagement. And the more powerful engagement is driven by the negativity. And if we can roll this back to, right storytelling versus left storytelling for a second here, I think the right has done a much better job, especially through Fox, but also through Facebook and YouTube, of being able to tell the more engaging story. And it is so engaging that not only is the right fully committed to wanting to know the next chapter of the story, but the left wants to know what the next chapter of their story is. So every new AOC that is on, the squad and everybody else, all of these characters that come out get turned into characters in the storytelling of the right. And what is their main narrative? Their main narrative is the destruction of America as they define America. So what a powerful story to be telling. And everybody wants to know what the next chapter is, including everybody on the left. And we can't stop shooting ourselves in the foot by responding and retweeting and quoting and putting it on CNN and all of this stuff, helping them spread this goddamn stupid message. Instead of getting our own message out there.
I think that's absolutely right. We are caught up in their story and their storytelling and the next kind of bizarre twist.
And the viewers don't even care how bizarre that next twist is. Hillary Clinton cannot simultaneously be the most powerful mastermind, conspiratorial planner, and also completely powerless. They want us to believe both of those things at the same time, but the people who are engaged with their story believe it, and it's fine, and it works for them. It is mind-boggling.
Yeah. Well, this was the same woman that couldn't manage a campaign to win seats that were obviously drifting away from Democrats for years. They didn't notice it, but she's running the world apparently and planning to imprison political opponents. I mean, again, projection. Can we go back to the issue of hope and kind of what we do now? I end the book talking about Terminator 2, and I was excited when I heard that Jason had moved to Mexico, because I thought he was doing a Sarah Connor, running over the border and building a kind of resistance camp against the machines. I don't know that he's not doing that, but he just hasn't told me what the plan is.
We can't tell you on stream.
I can't tell you on stream about the resistance that I'm building. But once I learn Spanish, I will have 7 people on my side.
Okay. But what's interesting about that film, Terminator 2, it's about how you live with the knowledge that it's all coming down, it's all coming to an end, when people around you seem to be carrying on as normal. How you cope mentally with that, how you cope psychologically with that. And obviously that character struggles, but she does take action, and we always want our protagonists to take action, because otherwise we don't sympathize with them or empathize with them. She does go to Mexico. She does start kind of building a resistance with the knowledge of what's about to happen. Now, I'm not suggesting we do that, but what is the political version of that? What is the political version of protecting ourselves and building resilience in our communities, and maybe spending less time, as Dan said, being caught up in someone else's story and the twists and turns of that, and more about working in practical ways to build resilience in our communities. The left is so kind of focused. Well, it's a broad brush critique, but the left is so focused on kind of national political debates and issues and so on, and that it's distracted, I think, away from the fact that will crumble. That is crumbling. What do we do about it now? What is our equivalent of going to Mexico and preparing?
What's our alternative narrative, would you say then? So if we're caught up in the right narrative, so you're kind of hinting at, I would guess, a localism, right? Like, the only way to break away from this right-wing narrative that we are the supporting cast in and we participate in is to create a new narrative. From what you just said, that new narrative has to be based on a local level. But of course, the part of your book is discussing these sci-fi movies. So how do we build that new narrative, and what kind of resources do we have in pop culture to construct that new narrative? So Sarah Connor going to Mexico, that's one thing. is there, you discuss 9 movies, but more broadly in the modern genre of science fiction, what kind of things should we be looking at, and how should we be constructing that narrative? Since you're the one who's put this very powerful case out, what do you think our first steps ought to be?
So I don't know how much people are into solar punk or the hope punk movement, but I think that that hopeful but realistic sci-fi that is set in a kind of post-collapse, it assumes environmental crisis, it assumes the breakdown of all of supply chains, it assumes the need for much more local community-based production. It uses technology, but is not kind of determined by technology. So it's technologically literate, but it's not cyberpunky in the sense of being in love with technology or dominated with technology. We haven't really seen movies or popular TV, I don't think, that reflects that solar punk movement, but it's definitely a flourishing literary kind of scene. I mean, you see it also in the work of Kim Stanley Robinson as well. His work, that kind of climate science fiction, contains elements of it. That's where I think we need to be looking and starting to tell stories from that kind of realistic but still hopeful science fiction about how the next 10, 20, 30 years could play out and the kind of communities we could be living in.
And I'm gonna take it out of sci-fi for a second, because recently there was a woman, her name's Mariah Potter, and she's a like an organizer in Atlanta, but she also came out with this song called "Work," and it's spelled WURK. But it's like a hip hop song that kind of like tells a recent narrative of some of these either unionizing efforts or some of the recent strikes that have been pretty successful, and just kind of just talking about the union wins, and it also, like, the chorus is like, it takes which side are you on, the the union song, and basically makes another song about it. That, and I guess too, it's like that might be the closest thing that in my head of even just trying to retell a narrative outside of responding to the right. This is an organizing effort, and it's a pretty dope song. People should check it out. But I don't know if this, I guess, as is Michael, is like, is it with that type of thing of even just artists kind of reflecting some of the left movements, does that help with the storytelling?
Yes. Yes, 100%. And I fully agree with that statement. And during the last, couple elections, I really tried to be active online with the social media presence that I have. If not actually endorsing policies, speaking out about what my opinions and my positions were, encouraging people to vote, because I think it's important for people who do have a presence in media, whether it's in music or movies or whatever, to be saying these things out loud publicly. Because one thing that the right is absolutely not concerned about is passionately speaking about these things that they believe. Their leaders are out there constantly hammering these messages, however awful they are. Your gun rights are more important than your children being safe at school. What? Like, that's horrible. And the left, which is the majority really needs to feel more comfortable and more passionate about expressing these things publicly. And so my thought was that if I could be out there with the platform that I have saying these things, then people, even if they didn't express it publicly, would realize that there are other people out there, there are other voices out there that have this message and agree with them, and would feel empowered themselves to take that action, even if it's a quiet action that doesn't have to be a big public display. I think Adam McKay's Don't Look Up on Netflix right now is a good example of someone using their platform to try to speak passionately to a message through the characters that they have created, and also trying to make a compelling film that people will talk about and say, you really want to see this movie because it's a good movie, but then also getting this message through to a large population.
And I don't think people understand like how important the storytellers are. And I don't know if I think I've told you this before, Dan, but there's a gentleman, and I know there's overlap in your world, and you know, Dan is not, it's not a political show that he does, it's about pop culture, but he does, you know, hopefully don't get mad at me for saying this, sneak in some kind of lefty points when he's trying to explain how things work. And there's a gentleman named Gary Vaynerchuk who's got a massive presence online, big time libertarian, kind of shitty guy. I'm sure there's overlap from people that watch him and watch your show. But I remember he had came out with a video where he was basically saying Toys R Us went under because they weren't innovators and they didn't jump on the internet. He just made everything up. There was nothing he said that was based in any fact. Toys R Us had been online since the mid 90s. Toys R Us was a powerful company that got destroyed by a leveraged buyout. So Dan does a show. He's done multiple shows about leveraged buyouts, destroying the narrative that it's just, they just can't get right because they don't know how to innovate. And they need a person like me that's smart, or Elon, or one of us smart guys to show them how to do things right. And Dan goes, no, 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 no. It's finance capital that comes in and destroyed this thing that we all loved. That's powerful to me because that's complicating the oversimplified kind of right-wing narrative of people like that when it comes to especially like companies going under of, well, they just didn't know what they were doing. It's like, oh, no, 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 no. There's people that know exactly what they're doing. And these companies are run by people literally in office. You know, Mitt Romney and Bain Capital go hand in hand.
So one thing I wanted to ask Michael, kind of following up on the question of storytelling and vision, which we're kind of on to now. Do you think the problem that we have in building a counter narrative is because by and large, the left, at least since the 90s, since the collapse of the Soviet Union, an alternative, however flawed political projects, only has a deconstructive focus. We can deconstruct the problems with society, but we don't have even a basis of any kind of forward-looking political vision. The only type of political vision you see generally on the left is either, I guess, on the social democratic left, you have a kind of mid-century Fordist, let's go back to the welfareism, which sounds good, but on a global scale with climate change, is that really possible? Or in the aftermath of, especially in online circles, like Stalin did nothing wrong kind of thing. But we actually don't have a forward-looking political program because culture, in my opinion, and maybe people disagree, I don't think culture drives politics, but it can assist trends that are going on. We can't construct a political program for the future out of sci-fi novels. We can use sci-fi to sell a political vision that we have. We can use culture to sell a political vision we have, to communicate that vision. But if we don't have a vision, we don't really, we can't build a narrative. The thing is, the right does have a vision, whether it's the techno libertarian capitalists or the like revivalist, quasi-fascists, reactionaries, whichever group it is. They have a vision of what their future they want their future to be. We don't even have a vision of the kind of future that we really want. The only visions we seem to ever articulate are idealized visions of the past, whether that's in mid-century Western social democracy or in an idealized version of the Soviet political project.
Yeah, thinking about these sci-fi dystopian films has made me think that ironically, the people that took most from them and took them most seriously were the right, even though many of them were kind of warning about the collapse of industrial capitalism, and it was unsustainable, and the danger of corporate authoritarianism, corporate-run societies, and so on. Actually, the right was sometimes inspired by them, as we talked about earlier, and looked at them and went, "Cool, that looks great. You know, that's a future we can work towards." But also took from them that society is going to collapse. This system is unsustainable, and I think what elites really did. One way of looking at the kind of new right revolution of the 1980s is that elites decided that society had already collapsed, right? That there was no need anymore, there was no point anymore to keep a bargain with ordinary working people. You could squeeze them more and more because there was no social contract anymore, because it was all over anyway. In a way, I think the right took dystopian sci-fi stories more seriously than we did, even though more of those stories originated from the left. Okay, so that's the first thing, and we didn't take them seriously, even though we spent the last 30 or 40 years kind of looking at the real world and going, "Oh yeah, that's like that dystopian movie, isn't it?" And then kind of carrying on with our day almost, and carrying on with our politics, as if that politics didn't need to be fundamentally reshaped. So here's the thing. I think there are parts of the left who deride the localism that you talked about earlier, that see that as not really big politics and not really up to the task of, you know, taking on this right-wing dystopia that we're increasingly living in. And I kind of understand that, but I don't think there are any other options. And I think at least it could provide people that localism, that local action, that building resilience and security and safety and local systems of care, healthcare, food production, employment, and so on. At least that would provide people with hope and a day-to-day kind of practical focus and energy, rather than, you know, focusing on what Ted Cruz has said recently, or Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? And I know that doesn't look like politics to some people on the left, but I think it's the only politics left.
Do you have any thoughts then on, for example, Rojava and the kind of the Syrian Kurdish anarchists, which you know, you have in Syria? You also have movements like the Zapatistas as well. Do you look to those type of movements as perhaps being better models, however flawed they might be, than, for example, you know, centralized state socialism at China or the USSR?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. You know, I mean, I read about them. Need to know more about them, but I think that's our only future. I think that's our survivable future. Unfortunately, if you take dystopia seriously, it's not going to be survivable for everybody.
Well, what's his name? We had a journalist who had lived with the PKK and the YPG in Syria. And one of the interesting things she said is that, you know, we talked about the geopolitics, and she was like, well, the Syrian Kurdish anarchists, they kind of know in the end of the day, they're going to get thrown under the bus by the US and they're going to get crushed. But their objective is not simply to like win the battle today, but to plant the seeds of an alternative localized political order. Now, that's obviously an idealized version of what's going on in Syria, but I found that a very interesting and telling kind of understanding that, you know, like, even if we don't win, we have to do these experiments to give people practical, like, vision of what the future is, because we just don't have that vision. And what I want to ask to everybody is, when we look at the landscape of science fiction today, and there's a lot of science fiction coming out now. I can't remember what. I think is V for Vendetta the most recent movie that you cover in the book. I can't remember. It's one of the more recent ones. So, yeah. But when we look at the present sort of offerings of, let's just say, TV and movie science fiction, do you have any thoughts on that? On what direction that's going? On big series that you've been watching, and what you think the current sort of crop of science fiction that's coming out, what kind of visions it's putting forwards, and how it fits into this broad overall argument? Is it just a continuation of the trends you're identifying, Michael? So that's to everybody. Any thoughts? Dan, anything you're watching at the moment that you think is
I'll be honest, as far as like pure science fiction goes, I really haven't been watching that much. Most of my entertainment consumption is unfortunately monopolized by the Marvel, Star Wars, Marvel Universe, Star Wars stuff, DC. It's all superhero based, because that's where I'm from. Growing up reading comic books for the most part as my escapism. That's sort of where I've stayed, and wanting to stay up on that story takes unfortunately that investment.
What do you think of the new Star Wars then? I mean, because Michael's written about like Star Wars and its utility, and I will defend the original Star Wars as a kind of heroic story, which is fine. I also think the prequels, although poorly executed, they are trying to tell the story about the rise of fascism. It's poorly executed. Someone should have just got in there and been like, okay, George, we're not going to have Jar Jar Binks. We're going to do a couple of things differently. But by and large, that story, you could fix it, right, to make it a good prequel movie. But what's your take on the new Star Wars? Because I've seen the movies, and I have opinions about them. I've seen The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, which I enjoy, but it's definitely a different type of tone. So, how do you feel about the direction of Star Wars?
I think taking it from the animated series, which I think was where Lucas could really dive deep into the story of inequality. And for those of you that haven't read Michael's book, Welcome to the Rebellion, and I know there's some people saying some things about Star Wars, and again, even Giannis was like, well, it's about a monarchy. Kinda. The fact that there's inequality in this Outer Rim region, and now all the new series that we're watching kind of all take place in the Star Wars universe inner city, right? Book of Boba Fett, The Mandalorian take place in the Outer Rim, where the Republic doesn't really have much of a presence. And one of the things that Michael points out in Welcome to the Rebellion is the inequality in the universe was never addressed in the first three movies when the rebellion is trying to defeat the Empire. And if you watch The Mandalorian, that inequality is still not addressed. In the animated series, that's part of the fight. It is this inequality. And you even see things like in the animated series with characters like Ashoka Tano. Am I saying her name right? Rosario Dawson's character in The Mandalorian, who leaves the Jedi Order because of what she sees is like, well, you guys don't really understand, the damage we're doing with these wars. And I don't really want to be a part of this order. And these clones are actually people. There's more complex stories, I feel like, in the animated series that he could get out that way. And I'm glad that the showrunner from the animated series is part of the new shows, but still there is something a little lacking with these new shows. And I do wonder how much you really can do when there is that massive corporate umbrella.
Yeah. I question whether or not in the world of Star Wars and the timeline that Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian are taking place in, we literally just saw the fall of an empire that only lasted about 30 years. And we know from the sequel trilogy that the First Order is the next attempt at that.
Mhm.
The first one failed. The pieces regathered. New leadership came up, and they built a bigger, worse weapon. You know? So I don't know to what degree Disney Star Wars is going to want to really address that message. I think the experience they had critically and in terms of audience reaction, whatever, to the sequel trilogy was, you know what, this end of the Empire era is safe and comfy and secure, and we're just going to kind of stay here. So I don't know to what degree they're going to address the fall of the thing that was just terrible versus the rise of the thing that's coming. We'll see.
Like there's a great episode of the last season of The Mandalorian, and again, I don't remember last time we talked about this, Michael. You hadn't seen any of it, but the last episode with Bill Burr, where he comes back, his character comes back, and they're on this planet that was kind of exploited by the Empire, and then they were exploited by the what would you call the rebels? What are they called? The Alliance? What are they called?
The New Republic.
The New Republic. And Bill Burr brings up to the point, he's like, look, these people just get exploited. They don't give a shit who's here.
Ukrainians have entered the chat.
Who's entered the chat?
Ukrainians have entered the chat.
Like I thought that you could look at that as kind of a knock on capitalism, if you're really trying to look deep into that episode, because towards the end of that episode, one of the new First Order people who will become the First Order is like, look, they're going to be begging for us to come back and do what we did. And I was like, oh wow, they're going to do some interesting storytelling. And then Boba Fett kind of lost me on the first few episodes.
I thought Boba Fett did some interesting stuff in the first couple of episodes, reaching back to this idea of the Tusken Raiders as the native inhabitants of Tatooine, and how they have been absolutely trampled upon by
by colonizers,
by everybody. Yeah, absolutely. And then that's, to me, that's been an interesting aspect of the turn of this Star Wars, is those characters have traditionally been savages. They've been treated that way. It's common Western stereotype, and now that we're actually getting into that culture and stuff, I thought there was some interesting things happen there. And then I don't know, maybe I shouldn't have been surprised by the fact that they all got wiped out. I should have seen that coming, I guess.
Well, as far as like other sci-fi stuff, and like I can't believe I've made it this far, but like I'm not a real nerd. Sometimes when you guys talking about this Star Wars shit, I'm like, I don't know. I should have got my brother. He's like steeped in it, but I feel like there's like a few series. I think people have mentioned like The Expanse is one of them, or it just kind of seems to build in like kind of the Blade Runner type of aspect of it, of like we will perpetuate into the future, with this inequality, and it's just going to look different ways. I think with The Expanse, you have people who are like generations into being born in space, and their bodies can't adapt to like actual Earth gravity, and like they're exploited and all. Like there's another one where like I saw where they could implant their chips. There's like basically your soul is in a little chip that you can put into different bodies, but who are able to have chips and new bodies and all of these things, and it kind of just kind of get you doing. I can't.
But that's it's on Netflix. It's like a Netflix series.
But it kind of just seems that some
of Black Mirror
recent stuff that
no, not Black Mirror.
Altered Carbon. That's the one. But they kind of like, I don't know, re-hitting the point of, no, this is going to happen, so get used to it. It's gonna, the inequality is just going to look a little different in space, pretty much.
I like The Expanse, and I read the novels, and I just finished the novels. There's like an extra sequence that they haven't done. I like it because it does talk a lot about class politics, and there's a lot of allusions to colonialism and resistance to colonialism. But ultimately, the solution to it all, and it was like basically a new deal for the whole solar system. It was basically, let's bring sort of mid-century social democracy sharing back, but in space, which again was like I mean, the two writers for it, I follow them on Twitter. They are pretty traditional liberal types of people. I think that the book is real. The books are great, but but it's a very capitalist, realist book. It's like the best we can hope for is some kind of more humane distribution of power over the capitalist system. So as much as I like The Expanse, and I don't have any problem, I'm not criticizing The Expanse, but I don't know. I mean, there's nothing on TV that's really speaking to the Ursula Le Guin dispossessed tradition of sci-fi writing, where when I read Dispossessed, I was like, man, I really want to go live on that planet and see how it is on that planet. So it's because it's so different, and it's like just a different vision of how things might be organized. But and Star Trek, I just have to say this: Star Trek. I used to my wife has a good saying. She goes like, I only want to go to space when we get to the Star Trek Next Generation. I'm like, why? She goes, because they have carpets on the Enterprise, and if they have carpets on the Enterprise, that it's fine. Like the last mainstream utopian science fiction was Star Trek: The Next Generation, because the new Star Trek that they're doing, it's all grim dark nonsense. Like people focus on, people get angry about they don't have any heterosexual white males as good guys and main characters.
Who says that?
People get really upset about. They're like, oh, there's too many black women. My favorite part about
black women.
There's like a black woman, and then they have like the only two main white guy characters are two gay guys. So it's literally the future the alt-right is terrified of. There are no heterosexual white men. There are only heterosexual black men and gay white men. Only one of the gay guys is white. The other is Latino. Yeah. So anyway, the point comes down to this. The problem, people don't know why they don't like the series. Some people obviously are like, oh, it's too woke. It's like, man, Star Trek was always a bit like that. But the issue is because it's just not very optimistic. It's all like gloomy and grim dark. And
but isn't gloomy? But let's run it back to like when did The Crow come out?
94.
Was it 94 The Crow came out?
Sounds right.
That is to me the beginning of all this shit is about to be dark as fuck. Maybe even you can run it back to 89 when Batman comes out. And that begins the start of we're about to make the superhero shit super dark, and we're gonna kill 79 Superman.
Well, that all goes back to the mid 80s with Frank Miller and Dark Knight Returns in the comics first. So Watchmen and Frank Miller with Dark Knight kicks off the dark era of comics, which bleeds into the 90s with the movies. And yeah, so we're back to the Reagan administration.
But seriously, remember that's always like an important place for me to go back to. But you know what? Another thing I found interesting in the Back to the Future 2 that I did not notice before. And I swear to God, either Harris had the script that he was writing off of, or he was sitting there going, pause it. And it's like writing down notes. But I didn't realize that Nixon gets a 6th term in Back to the Future too. Oh, and the Vietnam War went on to 1983.
Yeah, there's a spin-off story. It's not in the main film, but that's part of the spin-off story. I think it was a cartoon or something. Yeah, there's this whole alternative reality. Yeah,
I think darkness just sells at this point. Like people just want to see dark hero movies, and like when DC redid Superman a few years back, that was a dark ass Superman.
Yeah, but there used to be some hopeful stuff out there, right? There used to be in the 90s, you could watch Star Trek: The Next Generation, which was kind of chipper and upbeat. And then Babylon 5, which was pretty popular, wasn't quite as chipper and upbeat, but it was generally kind of like positive about the future and the problems get solved at the end. But then I have a feeling like the 9/11 and the Iraq War happened. The Star Trek Enterprise series was like the last Star Trek that was like optimistic. The one with Captain Jonathan Archer, which I think is underrated. It's better than Voyager. But then everything flipped and went grimdark. And then you had that new the Battlestar Galactica reboot, which was basically like Battlestar Iraq, which was like very compelling viewing, and it was kind of like cool for the time. But like, look, it was really like a real shift in tone. And after the success of that, I feel like the dominant trend has been to like reboot things, but reboot them in a grimdark version. Like my fantasy of rebooting something is to reboot Bucky O'Hare, but in a grimdark universe. It's like everything gets rebooted as grimdark, or is the new things that come out are really down and depressing. And I don't mind having all that, but yeah, I just kind of feel like I want something a bit chipper.
So I
Well,
wonder how much of that has to do with the arrested development of Generation X, the generation that was 10 years old in the Reagan administration, growing up with a future that seemed like it was locked in, that there was no. I know in terms of like jobs and career wise, I never felt like I ever worked for a company where I was actually going to progress through that company to realize the American dream of the house and the kids and all that stuff. I don't know how pervasive that is throughout the entire generation. Seems like it's there at least to a little bit. But just as the superhero genre is dominant right now, and that plays into these sort of power fantasies, it's also very dark because dark is real. The thing with Star Wars in 1977 and Blade Runner and all this stuff is that it's not shiny, it's not clean, it's not new, it's used and broken and piecemealed back together and taped together, and that's what it feels like to be living right now, and I think the darkness speaks to that. The other thing I would say about Battlestar Galactica's reboot is the other common thread through a lot of science fiction and just a lot of popular media right now is this idea of the hidden enemy among us. Cylons in 1978 were these clunky samurai robots with an oscillating red eye and a giant sword, and it was very clear you could identify them from a mile away. Cylons in the new Battlestar Galactica were human, basically. Like you couldn't tell the difference. That Terminator goes to the same place, where more and more each advanced version of the Terminator is more human, and you can't tell the difference. And obviously that's what Blade Runner was dealing with as well. And I think that becomes a common thread of it's harder to tell who the enemy is. They look just like us.
That's
Any
actually
thoughts, Michael?
an interesting point. Did you just say something, Gene?
No, I was going to ask Michael if you had any thoughts on the direction of the sci-fi.
I think, yeah. Well, to Dan's point, if you launch a new series or have a film that has a Blade Runner-esque setting, you don't need to explain it anymore to an audience. You don't need to explain how we got there. So it's perfectly possible to imagine a much more optimistic future set series, but you'd have to do a lot more work for the audience because in telling the story about how we got there, because they'd be saying, well, how did that happen? How did we get back on track to that 1960s optimistic Star Trek future? And what happened in between? Because we know the audience knows collapse is coming, as it were. So how did we get through collapse and then back to that?
Optimism is the bridge too far.
And you could do it. You could do it. I mean, I think, but look, the reason people love Star Trek is it's a group of intelligent people working together. They love the characters, right? I think so. It's the more optimistic setting, yeah. But I think the heart of it, the emotional heart of it, is here's a group of people solving problems each episode and getting themselves out of a hole, So you could imagine that in a kind of local solar punky kind of community. But I think you'd have to do a lot of work to convince an audience, even in kind of fictional credibility terms, that we could get back to a kind of universally positive universe, as it were, in the Star Trek sense.
I mean, I think the sad reality is that before I ask the final question, because I know it's getting late where you guys are, is that we live in a world where people want IPs that sell. I mean, look at the reboot of Fresh Prince. We're gonna make it darker. Bel Air.
Grim Dark Fresh
Carlton's
Prince.
so dark. Literally and figuratively. We even got blacker black people. So you know that they're really black. And when they
20%
dance
more black.
for white joy, it's for black fucking poverty porn. Look at them.
You can't have a
Uncle
like
Phil
a
is
fat
no
doc,
more.
you know, you can't have a fat Uncle
He's
Phil.
thinner and fit, and he's gonna
Yeah.
bang your wife. And there's gonna be a whole storyline about Uncle Phil banging some white chick because the Fresh Prince is dark. He's black as shit, and he's coming for your white woman. Dun dun dun.
D-Money and
But
Chucky.
now that I
Prince
made
of the
sure
Sandals
Will Smith
Resort.
will never come on this show, I do want to send a shout out to Malcolm Jamal Warner, who apparently watched our show and watched my video essay on Bill Cosby and doesn't hate us. So that's pretty fucking dope. It's pretty fucking dope.
Doesn't hate you out loud, right? So Dan made an important
No,
point.
he said, did Pascal send you the? Did he send you the thing? The Malcolm
No,
Jamal
no, I
Warner
didn't
who's
get
been
it.
watching our show?
No, he said some good things.
Yeah. We fucking blew. Like Pascal says, like you guys are gonna fucking shit.
No, he's gonna use it. So because Pascal, me and Jason have a long running thing where we tell Pascal that he needs to stop going on social media, tagging 50 people and writing big long posts. And he says, "No, it's my canvas. It's my art canvas."
He
Where I
literally.
get all my. He literally said it was his canvas, and then he's like, "Look, someone on Facebook, Theo Huxtable from the Cosby Show." He messaged me on Facebook. See, that doesn't justify you.
You're not coming on the show Saturday. An essay better be fucking written. Like he was trying to find ways to come on the show. He goes, "Oh, you guys are gonna be talking about Back to the Future and Blade Runner, huh? Those are two of my favorite." No,
That's rude. What you're doing to Pascal he is an adult. He's a grown man. And you're treating him like a child. That's fucked up.
No, we're not treating him
When it
like a
comes to that
child.
shit, we have to.
He's a star player. We're treating him like the star player.
Yeah, Pascal treats us like Allen Iverson in the fucking 90s. Like, hey, Pascal, you got to write.
You're talking about practice, man.
You talking about practice? You talking about praxis?
How the hell am I gonna make my teammates better by praxis?
Praxis. I can't do this with praxis. You know what? I'm happy. I'm happy he doesn't watch the episodes he's not on. This is the one day he's sitting at home. My phone's about to go off in a second. I do want to ask you guys though, real quick. Dan, did you do a Dune episode or am I tripping?
Not us, nope.
No, wasn't you? What do you
Cheat on
guys
watching
think
somebody
about?
else's show?
I've been cheating on you. There's another guy that makes fun of shitty movies from the 90s and 80s, and it's pretty funny. It's like a mystery science theater kind of shit. It's kind of funny sometimes. He watches some movies that I watched because I had cable and I was a latchkey kid, so I watched a lot of horrible films.
Did people like the Dune movie?
I want to know how you guys felt about talking about rebooting old IPs. I know Jean read the books because duh. I didn't read the book. I tried and I was like, I'm not. There's too much. There's too many words and the pages never end. There's no pictures. I can't do it. And then I wanted Dune to be Star Wars and it wasn't. It was the intro was like 15 minutes long. And I was like, what? Is she ever going to stop talking? Like, Jesus, Virginia Madsen, I get it. There's that much shit I got to know coming into this shit. I've never had a movie where I had to reference back to the beginning when she was explaining everything about what was going on. Jean actually explained it to me and makes me want to watch it now because he made it simple for me to understand. But what did you guys think of the first movie compared to the new Dune? I'll start with Dan because I know Dan to watch both. I'm lying.
I've seen neither.
You never saw the first Dune?
Never
So
saw it, no.
I never saw the
you
first
need to watch
Dune.
the
I haven't
first
read the
Dune.
books. I saw the second one, and like I like kind of the same thing of like what I did find interesting is that it didn't kind of up front tell you everything that was going on, you know, and like you gotta like kind of wait before like at least I felt I had a better understanding of like, okay, these are how these different players are interacting with each other. But I mean, like, I don't know. For me, like, I wanted to see, like, just, it was kind of boring, you know.
I'm a toy guy first and foremost, and that franchise has never really had a toy presence. They had a very, very brief toy line with the first movie, but beyond that,
I mean,
never-
how could you even get behind it? Look, I'm like you in that sense of give me an action figure and I'm good to go. I can follow your movie with the action figures. And I'm watching Dune like, because did you ever do this shit where if you saw a movie you liked, you would take your action figures and like you could play with them in that movie, whatever, if they didn't have
Sure.
figures?
Well, you want to have a piece of that experience, that fantasy. You want to have that at home. You want to have it on your shelf and
I couldn't
do
do it
your own
with Dune.
adventures and stuff. Yeah.
When that fat dude with the boils and shit came out, I was like, I don't even want to have an action figure that look like you, homeboy. Why are you floating around?
The one who milks the cat when they drink cat milk. That's my
Yeah,
favorite.
it's just like there's too much. And who are these bald women? It's like everybody's auntie just came out mad.
That's not from the book. But
The bald women are from the book.
No, the author of Dune, Frank Herbert, was a kind of libertarian orientated Republican, right? He was a conservationist as well, I believe. But Dune is very much a counterpoint to Foundation. If you know the Isaac Asimov Foundation series, so I always feel that the Dune and Asimov, you should read Foundation, and then the first 3 Foundation books, and then you should read Dune, because I think they operate in a kind of dialectic with each other, because Foundation is kind of optimistic about future and technology and like how we can get back from like collapse and how we can rebuild things through planning and things like that. And Dune is like, beware of like centralized authority, religion, and women.
Women. Especially if they're bald.
Any thoughts on that, Michael?
I didn't see the new Dune, the movie. I just couldn't get excited for it. I think, like Jason, when the original movie came out, I thought it was going to be the next Star Wars, the new Star Wars, and I was so kind of when it wasn't. I just kind of walked away from the whole thing. I was really excited in the run up to the original movie coming out. You know, I was buying all the kind of books and I tried reading them, and I remember I had this making of book and I was reading about the production and everything, and then and then it just didn't work for me at all.
Like you can't play Dune with your friends, right? Because you can play Star Wars with your friends. Like who's gonna be like, all right, I'm gonna be the dude from Twin Peaks, and then you be my inner monologue.
Yeah, exactly. Well, with Star Wars, you can do everything. You know, apparently
you do everything.
Apparently, at Springfield Comic-Con, they have a Springfield Comic-Con, and they have a Star Wars convention, and they even had a Star Wars theme orgy that got them all kicked out of the Springfield University hotel.
They were really
I guess you can have Springfield
cosplay doing it.
Yeah, they're like, you want to go hook up with a Wookiee?
That's so gross.
Apparently, there was a lot of cleaning, and the hotel doesn't let them do Comic-Con anymore because of the Star Wars themed orgy. I suppose you could have a Dune themed orgy too.
I thought this was America,
but it's not. The costumes wouldn't be as exciting. You know, watching your partner getting slammed by a Wookiee. I guess nothing beats it. Or an Ewok.
Now, is that like, let's see, is like, does that beat furries, or is that just an offshoot of the furry culture?
I don't know. I think it's just a Star Wars thing, man. Like,
I think
Star Wars people are very committed. It's a cosplay thing. People are very committed to their Star Wars cosplay.
I think cosplay is pretty interesting. I think it's really cool what some people come up with. I've been at a Comic-Con before. I was like, oh wow, this is pretty neat. But I would never think, oh man, I wish I could fuck all these people. Like that never crossed my mind when I was at. Never once did it cross my mind. Like, man, fuck that stormtrooper. Like never, never.
Well, I mean,
did I
you
think.
never wondered what's underneath the armor?
No, I never thought. Oh, look at this Thor! Look at hot Thor! Oh, fuck hot Thor! I was just like, oh, that's a nice costume. Maybe because I'm wholesome, and the rest of you are horrible.
Yeah, sure. That's it.
That's why. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I really appreciate you guys letting me talk about science fiction, and I get to listen to you guys talk about science fiction. I kind of want to ask Dan about Jar Jar Binks, but I don't want him to alienate his very large fan base because I'm sure there's a bunch of Jar Jar Binks fans that will unsubscribe the moment he says.
Can you do the voice, Jason? Can you do a Jar Jar Binks impression?
Because I'm black? I believe he's Jamaican, so you might want to ask Marcus's
No.
fucking Mumbleclot ass.
It's so fucked up. You just declared war on the whole island. You fucked up.
Is that why school was hard for you, Marcus? They found out you was Jamaican. It's like, oh, so your daddy talk like Jar Jar?
Thank God I was already out. When did that one fucking come out? That was
99.
99? Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, by that point, I could at least fight on the fucking. So it wasn't cool. Runnings was a thing. No one had the fucking guts to say anything about Jar Jar Binks. So
I still think your daddy talks like Shopper Ranks. We mad at you.
so I wish he was that cool.
And your mom makes food in the house like Patra. That's
I wish
the
she could
vision
clip
in
that
my
good.
mind of your life because you're Jamaican.
Oh no, it's well, just hold on to that because it's not true.
Well, it's gonna be true in my mind, and there's a lot of pot smoke in your house. Is that punishment for young Jamaican kids? Your dad takes away your weed stash.
Well, that's what I'm saying though. It's like there's like this whole thing of like my mom barely drank when she found like my first, like when she, not my first pipe, but when she like the first time she found like a fucking weed pipe in my house, like she was furious. Ran to the backyard, smashed it against some fucking rock, screaming like no, like it is.
Did she have a strong Jamaican accent?
Yeah. Which like I mean, like
all the way back to sandals.
Yeah. There's a TV show where they do. There's a TV show in Britain where it's like swapping parents, and they do a parent swap where they get some kids from England and send them to like I think it's either Jamaica or Barbados for parenting.
Yes, I saw that shit. They take those kids to Barbados. These shitty ass white British kids. What the fuck kind of show is that, Britain? Dan, have you seen this shit? Go on YouTube. There's this fucked up show where they send these fucking just the shittiest white kids you can imagine. Just shitty fucking kids. And they ship them to some fucked off part of the island where motherfuckers ain't got shit. And they're like, now you finna live in these people's house and they ain't got shit. And the white kids just come there like, I'm gonna smoke. Don't give me you don't want me smoking. I'm gonna smoke. And I'm going to shit all in your kitchen. I think they're Australian, right? And they're just fucking just pieces of shit. And then the brown people are like, hey, y'all got to get the fuck out. Like, as a matter of fact, I don't even want this show money anymore. You are pieces of shit. And this is why your parents don't love you, because you're just shitty ass children. And then the kids cry because the kids always cry like, what? This is why my mom doesn't love me, because I'm a piece of shit that likes to smoke in other people's houses, because who really does that anymore? Because that's really gross and everything smells like cigarettes.
And you want me to watch this show?
I don't want to watch it. I just want Jason to play all of the roles in the show.
Yeah.
Jason needs to whip out his Jamaican accent though. He's got or his Barbados Barbados accent.
Which
I
Gene, I gotta say, the way you say Barbados,
I can't do it. I always
Gene,
sound like I'm Scottish.
Gene puts the ADOS in Barbados.
Barbados. Well, the West Indian British accent is basically just the Cornish accent, isn't it? It's like Cornwall, but a little bit more sunny in disposition.
Dude,
It's,
I
if
don't
you listen,
understand that
you
show.
listen to a
That show
Cornish
sucks.
farm,
Remember Wife
and it's
Swap?
amazing.
Remember Wife Swap, where they'd be like, "Hey, you want to see something funny? Let's take this black guy from the inner city and have him go stay with some big white woman in the middle of America." Ha ha ha. No, this is way worse than that.
This is
way worse.
This is
But
putting sprinkling childhood trauma into it.
Just send a tweet out like, "Yeah, I watched that shit. Jesus, fucked. You just fucked up my whole day watching these shitty ass white kids. Now I got to go kick one white young person in the ass at the neighborhood mall because you made me watch this shit."
I deal with the shitty white adults in our comments all the time. I
I kid
don't
you
need
not.
any more of that.
There's a guy who did a video a couple of days ago about Games Workshop needs to change the Warhammer 40,000 universe a little bit to make it a little bit less fascistic and a little, because it's supposed to be satire, but if everybody doesn't realize it's satire, then there's a problem. And his comment section was bonkers, and the best comment was like, "Oh, you're all just brainwashed into thinking the Nazis were the bad guys, huh?" You know, it's like, whoa.
Wait a minute, Dan. What's the best worst comment you've got? Because your shows aren't like racially.
We have a pretty good filter
Albert
system. We have a pretty good filter system. That's producer Greg. I honestly don't even really look at most of the comments anymore. I can anticipate, what certain things are going to trigger people like that. We're not intentionally trying to poke any beehives or anything. I just know that sometimes when you use proper language and address people with respect and the way they want to be talked about, that sets people off. And we don't see it because we just block them. We don't give them a platform. We're not going to let them hijack our comment section in our videos to be dipshits, so we just block them, mute them, hide them, scream into the wind.
I did learn that lesson from you, and
yeah,
that was a very valuable lesson I learned. It helps keep me mildly sane in this world where everybody can tell you to eat massive dicks, and never.
I do want to throw a plug. It's like Left Flank. We were on this podcast.
I don't know where this is going.
Minion Death Cult. I don't know if y'all have heard of it, but they basically do that. They'll go, they'll check a Fox News like Facebook story, and then just like go into the comment sections and kind of like riff off of like these absolutely like ridiculous narratives that that the right kind of buys into, which allows them to then go out and do January 6th things or trucker convoy things. But yeah, it's very interesting. Is like it's not very interesting. It's also like just terrifying. Like they have a Minions law that within like 2 or 3 comments, someone's going to be calling for civil war, and it's just like without fail. Whether it's something about schools, abortion, some celebrity said that they accept trans people, and it's like civil war is happening. We need to prepare. And it's very scary. It's very scary. We don't need the sci-fi for dystopia. We just need the comments.
You need the comment section.
Yeah, well, to bring it all back to Blade Runner and social media engagement and all that stuff, part of the reason I just don't deal with it anymore is you can't tell who's real anymore. We already know that bots exist and bot armies exist, and they're too easy to buy and they're too easy to manipulate. And all of these trends and all of the truth and reality and what's real and what's fabricated, it's too hard to tell. I can't get too upset by comments on social media stuff because I honestly just don't know if that person's real. Is that a bot calling for civil war because you said one of the magic words that triggered the bot army? Who knows? Just block and move on.
Yeah, and plus I don't really give. There's more shit that like gets me hell of excited, and it's usually the Super 7 toy releases.
This weekend Toy Fair. This weekend is virtual Toy Fair, so there's a bounty of stuff coming.
I'm like, holy shit! They have a figure for that now. They probably have a figure for that really gross Dune guy with all the boils. What's his
McFarlane
name?
has that license.
So Dr. Harris, in closing, where do we go from here? Don't tell people to move to Mexico, because if more of me move down here, they're gonna fuck up and jack up my rent. I'm enjoying $3 fish tacos.
It's all about you, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, if you really want to know.
Well, if you're not building a kind of resistance hub down there, I'm very disappointed. But you'll let us know when the time is right.
I'll send like a special flare.
Okay.
You'll know the time is right.
But I'll be there.
I did want to say I wanted to show it, but I didn't know how to do it. I can't do it. But before we go, I want to ask. There was a video. Did I send it to Eugene? I sent it to Pascal and Teray. You know how we always talk about like people online say shit that they can't say in real life because there's repercussions. So there's a black guy and a white guy at an Applebee's in South Carolina, and the white guy is trying to explain to the black guy that there's different types of black people, and some of them are N-words and some of them are not, like the Chris Rock bit. And the black guy's like, say it again. And the guy's like, no, you don't understand. There's niggers. And like when the R came out, the black guy slapped him. He open-handed slapped him. And he slapped him repeatedly until I think he busted an eardrum, and he might have slapped that man back to the Revolutionary War. And then the guy gets up and he's confused, as one would be if they've been slapped 17 times with the might of all of oppression. And then the white guy goes, what did I say? I just said Nick. And then he commenced to slap at him again, where the dude was a little loopy at the end of the massive slapping. And I think that watching that video, I was like, that's why these people exist online, because there would be a massive slap off. Did I didn't send you that video, Gene?
No.
I literally watched
I watched that video.
You did send me the Golden Corral riot, which I enjoyed.
Yeah.
Did you watch? Have you seen that video, Dan?
The first one you're talking about, yes. Golden Corral, no.
Oh, okay. You saw that. Did you feel good watching that slap off?
Yeah. No, give it to him.
It was like, honestly, it's like that scene in Django when he's like whipping the dude, but it was like,
this is the thing. Part of the frustration with everything right now is there's no consequences for anything. We see all these awful things being done by a very small minority of people with lots of power, and there's no repercussions for anything. So, praying for a hero. That man stepped up that day.
Oh, you posted in the TIR Discord. I'm gonna check it out in the Discord.
Toussaint posted it. Oh, okay, I got to send it to Harris. It is the funniest shit I've ever seen when the guy gets up and he's like, "What?"
Jason just like watching racial violence.
which I don't know, and like maybe not like obviously like that, because like that's the old dude. I mean, he deserved to get the shit slapped out of him, but
the first 5 are okay, but the next 27, you're like, maybe that's a bit much.
But no, I think like, and even if this is like kind of like wrapping in what we've been talking about, is the consequences to actions, but not like it, but also the putting forward of a plan and even telling about those plans. Right? There's people who are doing work, whether it's like housing, food, like all the things that like lefties love. And I mean, we just got to talk about it. We got to really like write stories about it, And so if like, even if like the superhero is just like some just normal black dude that decides enough is enough, and like, then I'm gonna slap the shit out of you, man, and just slaps the shit out of racists. And if it's actually something that's like even like talking about something real on the ground about just people not fucking dealing with even like the minor fucking issues with racism and all this type of shit, maybe it could lead to more. So I'm looking forward to someone that's watching writing the fanfic of the dude slapping the shit out of the racist. And you got the Twisted Tea guy. You got the dude punching out the dude with the Nazi armband. You know what I'm saying? We've got heroes out there. We just need to draw them in cartoon form and make money off. I mean, spread the word. Spread the word about it.
Make money off. We got to find but seriously, I look forward to this book coming out. But as of right now, you do have 2 books that are out. You have Stay Alive, which is about capitalism's collapse using the Hunger Games, and Welcome to the Rebellion, which I have mailed to several people. Like I said, I mailed Dan a copy.
Appreciate it.
Varoufakis is getting a copy. So we're
That'd be
gonna.
great if he reads it. That'd be fantastic.
He's good. I think he's gonna read it because he actually threw. I'm not even trying to be funny. He threw the Vulcan gang sign at me when we were doing the thing. He's like, "Oh no, Star Trek." Yeah.
Great Greek accent there.
Well, he's from the south side of Greece, so they're a little more hood.
They sound like that. Nah.
Yeah, like a character in Dick Tracy.
South side of Greece.
Well, thank you guys so much. We're Dan. YouTube.com/Toy Galaxy every Thursday.
Toy Galaxy TV.
Oh, it's TV?
Yeah, there's a TV at the end there.
Okay. Well, you want to say
that only on YouTube though. Just search for Toy Galaxy, where they'll find us.
It's a great show. The latest what was the latest episode about?
Double Dare.
Double Dare. But I also wanted to watch the Alf one again.
It's always in stock. You can watch it anytime you want. NECA's got an Alf figure coming out later this year, so keep an eye out for that.
Sounds
NECA's the one that does the toys that made us, right?
No, NECA is the toy company. They do like really realistic 7-inch scale action figures. They got an Alf figure coming out this year.
Dan, the way you said NECA's got something coming out this year, I was like, what?
You want to
NECA, NECA. NECA.
I'm waiting for. I want to see. I'm waiting for Dan Larson's take on Warhammer, though. I'm looking forward to that.
We'll get to it. It's on the list.
Oh,
it's on the list.
My. You thought Dan all of a sudden felt real comfortable where he was.
I was like, I gotta slap somebody right now.
Well, Jason does distribute one-time N-word use passes to. So you can apply. There's a charge. You have to send him some money, and you get a ticket that allows you one N-word.
Yeah, it's a processing fee. No one's making money off of
There's the processing fee. But you have to pay more. It depends. If you want to use an R or an A, the R costs a little bit more.
Yeah.
Kuba got one.
Kuba talking about watching black. You know, he really did go back and watch black movies. Dan, can you do a show on House Party and alienate 90% of your fan base?
I would do it in a way that they'd watch. I'd make it entertaining and educational.
If you do a show on House Party, can you just send me an email the day before so I know to make popcorn and sit at the TV? Be like, oh man, I'm just gonna read the comments.
Fair enough.
It was a battle rapping good time. It was the 90s. High top fades. Well, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate this panel. Dan and Michael are actually kind of, I'll say it here live, influences on the work that I do and trying to get more professional, get tighter, get better. Harris is definitely an influence on helping me look at things in a different, deeper way. I do also get to message you guys outside of here, and you secretly help me with projects that I'm doing that you don't know you're helping me with. So I appreciate you guys, and I love the work that you do, and I hope everybody goes out and follows you guys. And Marcus and Jean, of course, you know how important you are to me. Jean, without you, there would be no video essays, because you're the one that tells me, no, Jason, this is the wrong word here. Change that to this, and you spell like shit. So everybody on the panel today is extremely important in the content that TIR creates. So from the bottom of my heart, I really do appreciate you guys and the work that you do. And I think it's severely, severely, severely underrated. So thank you guys. Thank you everyone for watching. If you haven't already done it, please hit the like and subscribe. If you have the means and you feel so inclined, yep, I bet that from you, Dan. Become a patron. I'm going to go and walk around Baja with my date and slowly build a resistance army. And when I cross the border again, I'm taking over an Applebee's. Have a good night.